I can find 100 like you. The words hung in the air of the London ballroom like shards of broken glass, sharp enough to draw blood. Lady Eleanor Ashworth felt each syllable as a physical blow, but she refused to let him see her flinch. She had spent 3 years perfecting the art of hiding her pain from this man. What was one more moment? James Thornton, the Duke of Ravenswood, stood before her in his impeccable evening clothes, his dark eyes cold as winter stone, his jaw set with aristocratic disdain. Around them the cream of London society swirled in a kaleidoscope of silk and jewels, but Eleanor saw none of it. Her entire world had narrowed to the man who had just shattered what remained of her foolish, stubborn heart. 100 like me, she repeated softly, and was proud when her voice didn't shake. Then you should have no difficulty replacing me, Your Grace. His eyes flickered with something that might have been surprise or possibly regret, but Eleanor was past caring which. She had loved this man for 3 years, had served as his political hostess with grace and discretion, had managed his household, entertained his allies, smoothed over his diplomatic blunders with charm and intelligence, had done everything a duchess would do, except she wasn't his duchess. She was his paid companion, his hired help, the woman who made his life easier while he searched for a wife worthy of his ancient name and considerable fortune, and she had been fool enough to believe he might eventually see her as something more. Eleanor, he began, and she heard the command in his voice, the expectation that she would listen, would comply, would continue to make his life convenient. Do it now, she interrupted, her voice steady and clear. Find your 100 replacements. I'm certain they'll serve you admirably. Good evening, Your Grace. She turned and walked away, her head high, her spine straight, every step measured and deliberate. She did not run, though every instinct screamed at her to flee. She did not look back, though she felt his gaze burning into her shoulders like a brand. She simply walked through the glittering crowd, past the shocked whispers and curious stares, out of the ballroom and out of James Thornton's life, and if tears slid down her cheeks once she reached the darkness of the garden, if her hands trembled as she gathered her cloak, if her heart felt like it was being torn from her chest with each step that carried her farther from the man she loved, well, that was no one's business but her own. Behind her, in the ballroom, James stood frozen, watching her golden hair disappear into the crowd. Around him, conversation had resumed, but he heard the whispers, saw the sidelong glances. Lady Eleanor Ashworth had just walked away from the Duke of Ravenswood, in front of half of London society. The scandal would be on every tongue by morning. He should have been furious. Should have been planning damage control, considering which of his considerable social connections he could leverage to minimize the gossip. Instead, he found himself thinking about the look in Eleanor's gray eyes just before she turned away, the flash of pain she'd almost hidden, the way her voice had wavered for just a fraction of a second on the word now. Well, Lord Marcus Pemberton said, appearing at his elbow with a glass of brandy and an expression of barely suppressed amusement. That was quite a scene. Care to tell me what just happened, or shall I wait to read about it in the gossip sheets tomorrow? James accepted the brandy and downed it in one swallow. I have no idea what you're talking about. Right. Your companion of 3 years just walked out on you in the middle of the Ashford ball for absolutely no reason. That's your story? She's not my companion anymore, James said, his voice flat. I dismissed her. Marcus stared at him. You what? She was becoming too familiar, making assumptions about her position. I simply clarified that she was replaceable. Replaceable, Marcus repeated slowly. James, you're my oldest friend, so I'm going to say this with love. You're an idiot. I beg your pardon? Lady Eleanor Ashworth is the most brilliant, graceful, accomplished woman in London. She's made you look good for 3 years while you've been too blind to see what was right in front of you. And you told her she was replaceable? She is replaceable, James insisted, ignoring the uncomfortable twist in his chest. I can find a dozen women who would be happy to serve as my hostess. 100, I believe you said. Marcus shook his head. Find them then. Good luck. You're going to need it. He walked away, leaving James alone with his brandy and the growing certainty that he had just made a terrible, irreversible mistake. But pride was a powerful thing, and James Thornton had pride in abundance. He was the Duke of Ravenswood. He didn't chase after hired companions, no matter how elegant or intelligent or irreplaceable they might be. He would prove Marcus wrong. He would find Eleanor's replacement by week's end. Someone better, someone who understood her place, someone who didn't look at him with those knowing gray eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. It should have been simple. It wasn't. Before we continue, dear listener, Tell me, where are you listening to us right now? From the kitchen while preparing lunch? From the living room taking a well-deserved break? Or perhaps from the bedroom, relaxing after a long day? Leave it in the comments. We love knowing you're here with us. And if you're enjoying this story, if the romance is touching your heart, please tap the like button right below. It helps us so much to continue bringing beautiful stories like this to you. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. We have a new exciting story every week, waiting for you. Now, let's return to our story, because you will not believe what happens next. The first candidate arrived Tuesday morning at precisely 9 o'clock. Miss Henrietta Blackwood came with impeccable references, a letter of introduction from the Duchess of Somerset, and absolutely no personality whatsoever. James interviewed her in his study, the same room where he'd conducted his first interview with Eleanor 3 years ago. He tried not to remember how Eleanor had swept in 15 minutes late, her hair escaping its pins, her reticule spilling papers everywhere, apologizing profusely while simultaneously critiquing the arrangement of his bookshelves. Miss Blackwood, by contrast, was perfectly punctual, perfectly coiffed, perfectly proper. She was also perfectly boring. "Tell me about your qualifications," James said, shuffling papers on his desk to avoid looking at the chair where Eleanor used to sit, usually with one leg tucked under her in a manner that was completely improper and entirely endearing. "I have served as companion to Lady Somerset for 5 years, Miss Blackwood recited in a voice that could have put an insomniac to sleep. "I am proficient in French, German, and Italian. I can manage a household of up to 50 staff. I am skilled in menu planning, correspondence, and social etiquette." It was everything he needed. Everything except the spark of intelligence in gray eyes, the quick wit that could turn a diplomatic disaster into a triumph, the warmth that made even his most tedious political dinners bearable. "Your references are impeccable," James said. "However, I'm not certain you're quite what I'm looking for." Miss Blackwood looked surprised, which was the most emotion she'd displayed since arriving. "May I ask why, Your Grace? I believe I meet all your stated requirements." "You do," James admitted. "Precisely. Thank you for your time, Miss Blackwood." After she left, James poured himself a drink, even though it was barely 10 in the morning. 1 candidate down, 99 to go. Except he didn't want 99 candidates. He didn't even want one. He wanted Eleanor. The realization struck him with the force of a physical blow. He sank into his chair, the chair behind his desk where he'd sat for 3 years while Eleanor transformed his life from a series of political obligations into something that occasionally felt like joy. "You're brooding," Marcus said from the doorway. "That was quick. I expected you to last at least a week before admitting you were wrong." "I'm not brooding, I'm working." "You're drinking whiskey at 10 in the morning while staring at an empty chair. That's brooding." Marcus helped himself to the decanter. "How many candidates have you interviewed?" "1. And?" "She was perfectly qualified and perfectly wrong." "Let me guess. She wasn't Eleanor." James didn't answer, which was answer enough. Marcus settled into the chair across from him, the chair that was Eleanor's chair, though James had never formally designated it as such. She had simply claimed it that first day, papers spread across her lap, suggestions for improving his upcoming dinner party flowing from her lips with the confidence of someone who knew she was right and expected him to recognize it. "You're in love with her," Marcus said. "It wasn't a question." "Don't be absurd. She was my employee. She was your partner, your equal in everything but title, and you were too pig-headed to see it until you drove her away." "I didn't drive her away. I simply clarified the nature of our arrangement." "You told her she was replaceable." "To her face, in front of witnesses." Marcus leaned forward. "James, I've known you since we were 8 years old. I've watched you navigate diplomatic nightmares, outmaneuver political rivals, and charm your way out of situations that would have destroyed lesser men. But when it comes to your own heart, you're the biggest fool in England. My heart has nothing to do with this, doesn't it?" Marcus stood, setting down his glass. "Eleanor Ashworth loved you. Everyone knew it except apparently you. She looked at you like you hung the moon and stars. She laughed at your terrible jokes, smoothed over your social gaffes, made you look like a brilliant host when we both know you'd rather be alone with your books and brandy. And when she started hoping that you might see her as more than just your capable assistant, when she started believing that 3 years of devotion might mean something, you crushed that hope with the cruelest words possible." James felt something crack in his chest. "She loved me." Past tense, my friend. Past tense. Because I guarantee you, after what you said to her, Eleanor Ashworth wants nothing to do with you. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. Although, if you're determined to prove you can find 100 replacements, by all means, continue. I'm sure one of them will eventually make you half as happy as Eleanor did. He left, and James sat alone in his study, surrounded by the ghost of a woman he'd been too blind to value until she was gone. The second candidate arrived that afternoon. Lady Victoria Ashford was beautiful, accomplished, and eager to please. She also giggled at everything James said, even when he wasn't remotely attempting humor, and referred to his political work as adorably serious. He dismissed her after 15 minutes. The third candidate, Miss Charlotte Brimley, was sharp-witted and intelligent. For a moment James felt a flicker of hope. Then she mentioned that she was engaged to be married in 6 months and was only seeking temporary employment until her wedding. You want a temporary companion? James asked, bewildered. I assumed that's what you wanted, Your Grace. After all, everyone knows you'll eventually marry someone of your own rank. Why would you need a permanent hostess? Why, indeed. Candidate 4 had been dismissed by her previous employer for theft. Candidate 5 couldn't spell etiquette. Candidate 6 was Marcus's younger sister playing an elaborate prank. You're not even trying to find someone. Marcus's sister, Lady Catherine, said cheerfully as James glared at her. You're deliberately finding fault with everyone because you're too stubborn to admit you want Eleanor back. That's not true. Prove it. Write to Eleanor. Apologize. Beg if you have to. I've met her, James. She's wonderful. She's also completely out of your league, which is probably why you didn't appreciate her. She was my employee. I was her employer. There's a natural hierarchy. Catherine laughed. Is that what you tell yourself? Eleanor Ashworth is the daughter of a viscount. She has her own modest income and could have married any number of respectable gentlemen. She chose to work for you because she believed in your political goals and wanted to make a difference. And maybe, just maybe, because she cared about you. But keep telling yourself it was about hierarchy. See where that gets you. After she left, James tried to return to his correspondence. But the letters blurred before his eyes, and all he could think about was Eleanor. Eleanor laughing at his dry wit. Eleanor defending him to a hostile committee member with logic so precise it was surgical. Eleanor falling asleep in the library after working late on his speech, her head pillowed on her arms, golden hair spilling across his notes. He had taken her for granted. Worse, he had taken her love for granted. And now she was gone, and he had no idea how to get her back. The week passed in a blur of unsuitable candidates and growing desperation. By Friday, James had interviewed 23 women. None of them were right. None of them were Eleanor. Marcus found him in his study Friday evening, surrounded by rejected applications and empty glasses. This is pathetic, Marcus said, not unkindly. You look like you haven't slept in days. I haven't. Because you're interviewing dozens of women you don't want, or because you're lying awake thinking about the one woman you do want? James didn't answer. Right, I'm invoking friend privilege. Get your coat. We're going out. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't care. You're going to eat something, drink something that isn't whiskey, and listen to me tell you exactly how to fix the mess you've made. 20 minutes later, they were seated in a quiet corner of James's club, plates of roast beef and potatoes before them, though James had no appetite. She's been staying with Lady Hertford, Marcus said without preamble. Lady Hertford is her godmother. Eleanor arrived there last Tuesday, devastated, and has spent the week trying to decide what to do next. James's head snapped up. How do you know this? Because I'm not an idiot, and I have friends who tell me things. Lady Hertford says Eleanor cries herself to sleep every night, that she blames herself for being foolish enough to love a man who couldn't see past her position as his employee. The guilt that had been gnawing at James all week intensified. I never meant to hurt her. But you did. You took 3 years of devotion and told her it meant nothing, that she meant nothing. That's not what I said. That's what she heard. And given that you literally said you could find 100 like her, I'd say her interpretation is fairly accurate. James pushed away his untouched plate. What do I do? How do I fix this? Honestly, I'm not sure you can. Eleanor has pride too, James. You humiliated her publicly. You broke her heart. And then, when she walked away with dignity, you let her go without a word. Why would she give you a second chance? Because I love her, James said, and it was the first time he'd spoken the words aloud. Because I was an arrogant fool who couldn't see what was right in front of me. Because I don't want 100 replacements. I don't want any replacements. I just want her. Marcus studied him for a long moment. Do you really? Or are you just lonely and embarrassed that you can't find someone as good? I'm in love with her, James said, more forcefully now. I've been in love with her for God knows how long. Maybe since the beginning, when she walked into my study late and disheveled and proceeded to tell me everything I was doing wrong. Maybe when she charmed Lord Westhaven into supporting my education bill when he'd been my staunchest opponent. Maybe when I found her asleep in the library and realized I wanted to wake up to that sight for the rest of my life. I don't know when it happened. I just know that I can't imagine my life without her in it. Then you need to tell her that. Not me. Her. She won't see me. Make her see you. You're the Duke of Ravenswood. You've faced down hostile parliaments and foreign diplomats. Surely you can convince one heartbroken woman to give you 5 minutes to grovel. And you, dear listener, what would you do in James's place? Have you lived through something similar? Do you know someone who went through a situation like this? Tell your story in the comments. We read each one with affection and love knowing your experiences. And if this story is making you sigh, smile, or even shed a tear, share it with someone special. Think of that friend, sister, or daughter who would also love this journey. Send her the link. Love is meant to be shared, isn't it? But let's return, because what is about to happen will leave you speechless. Lady Hertford's townhouse was as elegant as the woman herself, all tasteful decor and quiet sophistication. James stood on the front steps Saturday morning, holding a bouquet of Eleanor's favorite flowers, white roses and lavender, and feeling more nervous than he'd felt before addressing Parliament for the first time. The butler who answered the door looked at him with thinly veiled disapproval. Lady Hertford is not receiving visitors, Your Grace. I'm not here to see Lady Hertford. I'm here to see Lady Eleanor Ashworth. Lady Eleanor is also not receiving visitors. Particularly not you, Your Grace, if I may be frank. You may not. Please inform Lady Eleanor that I will wait here as long as necessary. All day if required. I have nowhere else to be. The butler's expression suggested he thought James was an idiot. James couldn't disagree. But he settled himself on the steps, bouquet in hand, prepared to wait. He didn't have to wait long. 10 minutes later, Eleanor herself appeared at the door, and James's heart stopped at the sight of her. She looked beautiful and terrible all at once. Her golden hair was pulled back severely, emphasizing the paleness of her face and the shadows under her gray eyes. She wore a simple morning dress of dove gray, and James realized with a pang that she'd chosen mourning colors, not for someone who had died, but for something that had. You need to leave, she said, her voice carefully controlled. You're embarrassing yourself. I don't care. Well, I do. Lady Hertford has been kind enough to take me in. I won't repay her by having the Duke of Ravenswood camped on her doorstep creating a scandal. Then speak to me. 5 minutes, Eleanor. That's all I ask. You don't get to ask anything from me anymore. You made that very clear Tuesday night. James stood, still holding the flowers. I was wrong. About everything. And I'm sorry. You're sorry. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. How generous of you to apologize after destroying 3 years of my life. After reducing me to nothing more than a replaceable convenience in front of everyone we know. Tell me, Your Grace, did you find your 100 yet? Or are you still working through the applications? There is no one else. There could never be anyone else. How convenient. You realize you can't function without someone managing your life, so now you're here to lure me back with apologies and flowers. But I'm not coming back, James. I'm done being the woman who makes your life easier while you treat her like an interchangeable piece of furniture. That's not what you were to me. Really? Then what was I? Because from where I'm standing, you made it very clear that I was simply an employee. Skilled, perhaps, but ultimately replaceable. Just one of 100 potential hostesses who could smile at your guests and remember which fork to use. You were everything to me, James said, and his voice broke on the words. You are everything to me. And I was too blind and too arrogant to see it until I'd driven you away. Eleanor's expression flickered, just for a moment, before hardening again. Pretty words. But words are easy, aren't they? It's actions that matter. And your actions told me exactly what I needed to know. Then let me show you different actions. Let me prove that I mean this, that I love you. She went very still. What did you say? I love you, Eleanor Ashworth. I'm in love with you. I think I have been for years, but I was too foolish to recognize it. I told myself you were just my companion, my hostess, my employee, because admitting anything else would mean acknowledging how much power you had over my happiness. And that terrified me. Tears were sliding down Eleanor's cheeks now, though she made no move to wipe them away. You had a funny way of showing it, telling me I was replaceable, that you could find 100 like me. I know. and I will regret those words for the rest of my life, because they were a lie, Eleanor. A desperate lie from a man who was terrified of his own feelings. The truth is, there's no one like you. Not 100. Not one. You're extraordinary and irreplaceable, and I've spent the worst week of my life realizing that I'd rather have you in my life in any capacity than not have you at all. In any capacity, she repeated softly, as your employee. No. James took a step forward, then another, until he was standing directly in front of her. As my wife, if you'll have me, if I haven't destroyed any chance of that with my cruelty and stupidity. Eleanor, I'm not asking you to come back as my companion. I'm asking you to marry me, to be my duchess, my partner, my equal in everything, to spend the rest of your life with a man who doesn't deserve you, but who will spend every day trying to be worthy of your love. Eleanor stared at him, and James could see the war in her eyes, the desire to believe him fighting against the fear of being hurt again. You humiliated me, she whispered, in front of everyone. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, starting now. James raised his voice, projecting toward the windows where he knew curious servants and probably Lady Hertford herself were watching. I, James Thornton, Duke of Ravenswood, am an arrogant fool who failed to recognize the most extraordinary woman in England when she was standing right in front of me. Lady Eleanor Ashworth is brilliant, graceful, accomplished, and utterly irreplaceable. I love her desperately, and I'm begging her to give me a chance to prove that I can be the man she deserves. A window on the second floor opened, and Lady Hertford leaned out, her expression amused. Well said, Your Grace. Eleanor, darling, if you don't accept him, I might consider it myself, and I'm 62. Despite everything, Eleanor laughed. It was watery and broken, but it was a laugh. You're both impossible. Is that a yes? James asked, hardly daring to hope. It's a maybe, Eleanor said, but she was smiling now, tears still streaming down her face. It's a I need to hear more about how you plan to grovel for the next 50 years. I can provide details, extensive details. May I come in? Eleanor looked at him for a long moment, and James saw the exact instant when her walls began to crumble. You hurt me, James. Really hurt me. I know, and I'm sorry. More sorry than I can possibly express. If I give you another chance, if I trust you with my heart again, and you break it, I won't. I swear to you, Eleanor, I won't. She studied him, those gray eyes that saw everything, that had always seen straight through to his soul. And then, finally, she stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in then, but you're not forgiven yet. You're going to have to work for it. James felt something in his chest ease for the first time in a week. I'll work for it every day for the rest of my life if necessary. Good, Eleanor said, because that's exactly what I expect. The sitting room Lady Hertford ushered them into was warm and welcoming, a fire crackling in the hearth despite the mild weather. Eleanor sat in a chair by the window, and James took the seat across from her, acutely aware of the physical distance between them and the even greater emotional distance he needed to bridge. Lady Hertford excused herself with a knowing smile, leaving them alone with the door conspicuously ajar for propriety's sake. Tell me, Eleanor said quietly, when did you realize? That you loved me, I mean. Was it this week when you couldn't find a replacement? Or did you know before? James considered lying, trying to make himself look better. But Eleanor deserved the truth, all of it. I think I've known for a long time, he admitted, but I buried it, refused to acknowledge it, because loving you meant admitting you had power over me, meant being vulnerable in a way I've never allowed myself to be. My parents' marriage was a disaster, Eleanor, a political alliance that became a prison for both of them. I swore I'd never let myself be that vulnerable to another person. So you kept me at a distance, employer and employee. Yes, even though every day I found myself looking for excuses to spend time with you, even though I found myself sharing things with you I'd never shared with anyone else, even though coming home meant seeing you, and that was the best part of my day. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. You never told me about your parents' marriage. It wasn't something I talked about, but my mother was miserable. My father was cold. They stayed together out of duty, and it destroyed them both. I saw that growing up, and I promised myself I'd never marry unless it was absolutely necessary for the title, that I'd never give anyone that kind of power over my happiness. And then you hired me. And then I hired you, James agreed, and you made me laugh, made me think, challenged me when I was wrong and supported me when I was right, made me want to be better, do better. You made my house feel like a home, and that terrified me. So when you realized I had feelings for you, I panicked. pushed you away in the cruelest way possible, told you exactly what I thought would keep you at a safe distance, would remind both of us of the hierarchy that protected me from having to feel anything real. Eleanor was crying again, but quietly now. I loved you so much, James. For 3 years I loved you, and I kept hoping that maybe eventually you'd see me as more than just your capable assistant. But you never did. I did, James said urgently, leaning forward. I saw you, Eleanor. That's why I was so scared, because I saw exactly how extraordinary you are, how essential you'd become to my life, and I couldn't handle it. So I lashed out, hurt you before you could hurt me. And in the process, I destroyed the best thing in my life. How do I know you won't do it again? Eleanor asked, her voice breaking. How do I know that the next time you get scared you won't push me away again? You don't, James said honestly. All I can do is promise to try to be braver, to trust you with the parts of me I've kept hidden, to choose vulnerability over safety every single day, and hope that's enough. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, staring at the fire. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I've spent the last week trying to hate you, trying to convince myself that what you said was unforgivable. But the truth is, James, I'm still in love with you, and that makes me so angry, because it would be easier if I could just hate you and move on. I don't want you to hate me, but I don't want you to make this easy on me either. I don't deserve easy. I deserve to grovel and beg and spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worth the risk. A ghost of a smile touched Eleanor's lips. The rest of your life is a long time. Not long enough, James said. Not nearly long enough to show you how much I love you. Eleanor stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden below. James waited, hardly breathing, knowing that whatever she said next would determine the rest of his life. If I agree to this, she said finally, still not looking at him, if I give you another chance, things will be different. I won't be your employee anymore. I won't manage your household or host your dinners or smooth over your political gaffes unless I choose to. If I'm going to be your wife, I'm going to be your equal partner in everything. Your Duchess, not your servant. Yes, James said immediately. Absolutely yes. Eleanor, I don't want a hostess or a housekeeper or someone to make my life convenient. I want a partner, an equal, someone who will call me out when I'm being an arrogant fool, who will challenge me to be better, who will share my life as an equal in every way. And when we disagree, when I have opinions that differ from yours, then we'll discuss them, debate them, and hopefully reach a compromise. But your voice will matter as much as mine. More, probably, since you're usually right about everything. Eleanor laughed, and the sound was like sunshine breaking through clouds. Flattery will get you somewhere, but not everywhere. Good. I don't want it to be easy. I want to earn this. Earn you. She turned from the window then, and James saw hope beginning to replace the hurt in her eyes. I'm not promising anything yet, but I'm willing to try. Willing to let you prove that you mean what you're saying. James stood, moving closer but not touching her, respecting the space she needed. How do I prove it? Tell me what you need and I'll do it. Time, Eleanor said. I need time to heal, to trust you again, and I need you to be patient while I do. I can do that. And I need you to be honest with me, always, even when the truth is uncomfortable, especially when the truth is uncomfortable. I promise. And I need, her voice broke, I need to know that you're choosing me because you love me, not because you couldn't find anyone else to manage your life. James took her hands, and when she didn't pull away, he counted it as progress. Eleanor, I interviewed nearly 30 women this week. Some of them were perfectly qualified. Some of them might even have done the job adequately, but none of them were you. And I realized that I don't want adequate. I don't want qualified. I want you. Your laugh, your wit, your infuriating habit of being right about everything, your kindness, your strength, the way you make everyone around you better just by being in the room. I want all of you, Eleanor. Not because you're convenient, but because my life is meaningless without you in it. She was crying fully now, but she was also smiling. You really are terrible at this. At what? At expressing emotions. But you're trying. I can see that you're trying. I'll keep trying, every day. I'll probably mess it up sometimes, but I'll always try. Eleanor squeezed his hands. Then I suppose we'll figure it out together. Together, James repeated, and the word felt like a promise. Does that mean? It means I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes yet either. Court me, James. Show me that you mean this. Show me that the man I fell in love with is real and not just someone I imagined. I can do that, James said, relief flooding through him. I will do that. Starting right now. Right now? Right now. May I take you to dinner? Somewhere nice, where everyone can see me courting you properly? Where I can spend the evening telling you all the things I should have said years ago? Eleanor hesitated, and James could see the fear still lingering in her eyes, the fear of being hurt again. But beneath it, he also saw hope and love, the same love that had sustained her through 3 years of being taken for granted. Dinner, she said finally, but somewhere quiet. I'm not ready for all of London to watch us yet. Anywhere you want, James promised, as long as I'm with you. We're almost reaching the end of this exciting journey, but if you love the romance of Eleanor and James, I have wonderful news. We have dozens of other stories waiting for you here on the channel. Breathtaking historical romances, heartwarming second chances, unlikely loves that seem impossible until they happen. Each story more exciting than the last. After finishing this one, scroll down and check out our playlists. I'm sure you'll find your next favorite story. And don't forget, activate the notification bell. That way you receive an alert whenever we publish a new story. Because let's be honest, you already know you'll want the next one, right? Now yes, let's get to the moment you were waiting for, the ending your heart asked for. The courtship that followed was unlike anything London society had ever witnessed. James Thornton, the Duke of Ravenswood, known for his political brilliance and emotional reserve, courted Eleanor Ashworth with a single-minded determination that became the talk of every drawing room and dinner party in the city. He sent her flowers every morning, not elaborate arrangements designed to impress, but small bouquets of her favorites, always with handwritten notes. Some were poetic, some were clumsy, all were sincere. He took her to museums and galleries, to the theater and the opera. He listened to her opinions about politics and society, and more importantly, he acted on them. When she mentioned that his proposed education bill could be strengthened with provisions for girls' schools, he added them. When she suggested a more diplomatic approach to a thorny negotiation with France, he took her advice. He introduced her to his colleagues not as his former companion, but as Lady Eleanor Ashworth, the brilliant woman he was courting. He deferred to her judgment in matters where she was more knowledgeable. He made it clear to everyone who would listen that she was his equal and his better. And slowly, carefully, Eleanor began to trust him again. He's different, she told Lady Hertford one afternoon over tea, 6 weeks into their courtship. More open, more willing to be vulnerable. Men often are when they realize what they've lost, Lady Hertford observed. The question is, will it last? Or will he revert to his old ways once he has you safely married? It was a fair question, one Eleanor had asked herself repeatedly. I think he's genuine, she said finally, but I'm also being careful, making sure this isn't just panic over losing his convenient hostess. And? What's your verdict? Eleanor smiled, and it was the first genuinely happy smile she'd worn since the night at the Ashford ball. I think he loves me, really loves me. Not because I make his life easier, but despite the fact that I now make it considerably more complicated. How so? I have opinions about everything. I challenge him constantly. I refuse to simply defer to his judgment anymore. And instead of being annoyed, he seems delighted by it. Lady Hertford laughed. Then he's a smarter man than I gave him credit for. Most men want a pretty ornament. The rare ones who want a true partner are worth keeping. That evening, James arrived to escort Eleanor to dinner at Lord and Lady Pemberton's estate. When she descended the stairs in a gown of deep sapphire blue, his expression made her feel like the only woman in the world. You're beautiful, he said simply. You're always beautiful. But tonight, you're breathtaking. Flattery, your grace. Truth, Lady Eleanor. Always truth. As you demanded. They rode to the Pemberton estate in comfortable conversation, discussing the latest political developments, a book they'd both recently read, and Marcus's attempts to set James up with catastrophically unsuitable women as revenge for past perceived slights. He introduced me to a woman who trains exotic birds, James said, laughing. She brought a parrot to our meeting. It bit me 3 times and called me an imbecile. The bird sounds perceptive, Eleanor teased. The bird sounds like it's been spending too much time with you. Eleanor swatted his arm, and James caught her hand, holding it gently. Eleanor, there's something I need to ask you. Her heart skipped. Yes? Tonight, at dinner, Lord Pemberton is going to announce that he's supporting my candidacy for Foreign Secretary. It's a significant political advancement, and it wouldn't have been possible without your advice on how to approach him. You've been instrumental in every success I've had these past 6 weeks, just as you were for the 3 years before that. James, you don't need to thank me. I'm not thanking you. I'm asking you. If I'm appointed Foreign Secretary, I want you by my side. Not as my hostess or my companion, but as my wife and partner. Eleanor, I can't wait any longer.
I know we agreed to take time, and I'm willing to wait as long as you need. But I need you to know that I'm certain. Completely, absolutely certain. I love you. I want to marry you. And every day I don't get to call you, my wife is a day wasted. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears.
James, you don't have to answer now, but I needed to say it. Needed you to know that this isn't a courtship with an uncertain ending for me. I know exactly what I want, and it's you. Today, tomorrow, forever. The carriage rolled to a stop outside the Pemberton estate, but neither of them moved to exit. I love you too, Eleanor said softly. I never stopped loving you even when I wanted to, even when you hurt me. And yes, James, yes, I'll marry you. For a moment, James simply stared at her, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. Then he was pulling her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache in the best possible way. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling through tears. I don't have a ring yet, James said, laughing shakily. I was planning a proper proposal next week. This wasn't how I intended to do this. I don't need a ring, I just need you. This you, the real you. The man who's brave enough to be vulnerable, who trusts me enough to be his partner, who loves me enough to risk being hurt. You won't hurt me, James said. You're the one person I trust completely. Good, because I'm going to hold you to every promise you've made. Equal partnership, honesty, vulnerability, all of it. I wouldn't want it any other way. They entered the Pemberton estate hand in hand, and when Lord Pemberton made his announcement about James's appointment as Foreign Secretary, he also announced the Duke of Ravenswood's engagement to Lady Eleanor Ashworth. The room erupted in applause and congratulations. Marcus cornered them immediately, grinning like a fool. Finally, he said, I was beginning to think you'd never come to your senses. I'm a slow learner, James admitted, but I get there eventually. And Eleanor, you're a saint for taking him back. I hope you know what you're getting into. I do, Eleanor said, looking up at James with all the love in her heart shining in her eyes. I absolutely do. The wedding took place 8 weeks later, in the chapel at Ravenswood Estate. Eleanor wore a gown of ivory silk and lace, her golden hair woven with white roses and lavender. James waited at the altar, his hands trembling slightly as he watched her walk toward him. When the minister asked if he would take Eleanor as his wife, James's voice was strong and clear. I will, today and always, with all my heart. And when it was Eleanor's turn, she looked into the blue eyes of the man who had broken her heart, and then worked tirelessly to earn it back, and said with equal conviction, I will. I choose you, James, today and always. They exchanged rings, simple gold bands that symbolized an unbroken circle of trust and love. And when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, when James kissed her for the first time as her husband, Eleanor felt all the broken pieces of her heart finally, completely heal. At the wedding breakfast, Marcus gave a toast that had the entire gathering laughing and crying in turns. I've known James since we were boys, he said, and I've watched him navigate life with intelligence and determination. But for all his cleverness, he almost missed the most important thing right in front of him. He almost let pride and fear cost him the love of an extraordinary woman. Fortunately, Eleanor is not only extraordinary, but also forgiving. And James, by some miracle, eventually came to his senses. He raised his glass. To the Duke and Duchess of Ravenswood, may they spend the rest of their lives proving that even the biggest fools can find their way to happiness when they finally open their hearts. To happiness, the guests echoed, and James pulled Eleanor close, whispering in her ear, I love you, my Duchess, my partner, my everything. I love you too, Eleanor whispered back, my impossible, infuriating, wonderful husband. Years later, when people asked Eleanor about her love story, she would smile and say it was complicated, that it involved pride and pain and a broken heart that took courage to trust again. But she would also say it was worth it. Every tear, every moment of doubt, every carefully rebuilt piece of trust. Because in the end, she had found not just love, but partnership. Not just a husband, but an equal. Not just a title, but a true home. And James, for his part, never forgot the lesson he'd learned that terrible week when he'd driven away the woman he loved. He never again took Eleanor for granted, never dismissed her contributions or treated her as anything less than his full partner in life. He had spent a week trying to find 100 replacements for Eleanor Ashworth, and he had spent the rest of his life grateful that he'd failed, Because there was only one Eleanor, only one woman who could make him want to be better, braver, more worthy of the love she gave so generously. She had given him a second chance he didn't deserve, and he had spent every day since proving he could be the man she deserved. Their first anniversary arrived with the changing of the seasons, autumn once again painting London in shades of gold and amber. James had planned an intimate dinner at Ravenswood House, just the two of them, away from the demands of his position and the constant scrutiny of society. Eleanor descended the stairs to find the dining room transformed. Candles everywhere, white roses and lavender arranged in crystal vases, the table set for two. "You remembered," she said, her voice catching. "I remember everything about you," James said, taking her hand and leading her to her seat, "including the fact that you prefer quiet celebrations to grand gestures." They dined on her favorite foods, talked about everything and nothing, laughed at private jokes that no one else would understand. And when the meal was finished, James produced a small velvet box. "I never properly proposed," he said. "I asked you in a carriage on the way to a dinner party. You deserved better. You deserve everything." Inside the box was a ring of breathtaking beauty, a gray pearl the exact shade of her eyes, surrounded by small diamonds that caught the candlelight. "It's perfect," Eleanor whispered, as he slipped it onto her finger beside her wedding band. "You're perfect," James corrected, "and I'm the luckiest fool in England." Eleanor laughed, that sound that had become his favorite in all the world. "We're both fools, but we're fools together. Forever together," James agreed, pulling her close. And in that moment, surrounded by candlelight and flowers, holding the woman he loved more than his own life, James Thornton understood what his parents had never known. That true partnership wasn't about power or hierarchy. It wasn't about one person serving another or making life convenient. It was about choosing each other every single day. About being vulnerable enough to show your worst and trusting that you'd be loved anyway. About building something together that was greater than either of you could create alone. He had told Eleanor he could find 100 like her. It was the biggest lie he'd ever told, because there was no one like Eleanor. There never had been. There never would be. She was his once and always. His impossible, irreplaceable love. And he would spend the rest of his life being grateful that she'd been brave enough to give him a second chance, and that he'd been smart enough to spend every day since proving he was worthy of it. And so ends the story of Eleanor and James. A journey about pride that nearly destroyed love, about second chances and the courage to trust again, about recognizing that sometimes the most precious things in life are the ones we take for granted until we almost lose them. I hope this story touched your heart as much as it touched mine bringing it to you. If it moved you, if you sighed, if you smiled along with our characters, leave your like. It motivates us to continue. And tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment? What touched you most? We want to know. Each comment is read with affection. Are you missing it already? Don't worry. We have a new story coming very soon. Subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss it. And while you wait, explore our channel. We have so many other beautiful stories waiting for you. Thank you so much for your company, for choosing to spend this time with us, for opening your heart to one more love story. Until the next journey, dear listener, may your heart always be open to love, to hope, and to the good moments life reserves for us. A warm hug, and see you soon. Claude é uma IA e pode cometer erros. Por favor, verifique as respostas.